Welcome to People Are Everything, the show that's a bit like Desert Island Discs, but rather than bring music, I ask my guests to bring the 5 people that have shaped who they are today. And today I'm thrilled to introduce you to Chukwudi Iwuji. You'll know him best from his roles in Guardians of the Galaxy, John Wick, The Split, and most recently, his role starring with Eddie Redmayne in the blockbuster Day of the Jackal. And also his amazing career as the Royal Shakespeare Company member. So I know you're going to love this conversation as I did. He's so warm, he's articulate, and his sense of family and the importance of the people that shaped him is really, really heartwarming to hear. So I really know you're going to enjoy this. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce you to Chukwudi Iwuji. Hello, Chukwudi. Welcome to People Are Everything. This is all very exciting.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, well, it's just thrilling to meet you. I met you through initially your brother with a chance encounter at a bar, which sounds awfully dodgy, really, but it wasn't. It was lovely. I met
an airport bar, wasn't it?
It was an airport bar. We were flying out to LA, and there's no coincidence that I'm doing this. People really are everything for me. And so if I sit at a bar and there's somebody left or right, I'll usually strike up a conversation. And I think your brother was to my right. And we shared a little anecdote about vodka martini. And that's how we started talking. And then obviously shared a little bit more. And we've become friends now. And I met him several times since, which led me to you. And but I have to confess, I first met you in inverted commas following your career, and just firstly in The Split. That's when I first saw you, I think, on the screen. So to have you on my podcast is absolutely thrilling. So I'm really pleased you've taken the opportunity to talk to me, and thank you so much for taking the time. So
it's a pleasure.
Oh, bless
I think it's a pleasure. We'll see after an hour.
Yeah, let's see. I said that to someone the other day. They said, "Oh, thank you for inviting me." I said, "Well, let's see how this goes." But listen, I know you from what I've experienced of you. In the build up to chatting today, we've gotten to know each other a little bit, and obviously people will have their understanding of what your work. But the purpose of today is to kind of we'll get into a bit of that, I guess. But it really is to talk about the people in your life. But why don't we start with that? Why don't we start with who you are, what you're about, what you want to share with everybody today about yourself?
Well, I'm Chukwudi Iwuji. That's who I am. What I do is I am an actor for my sins. And yeah, I'm an actor and producer and sometime writer and a father and a husband and a son and brother. I'm all those things. And I guess there's the career side of it we could talk about, but I think I love the idea of what this show's about because I realize you are really defined by the people in your lives, or past, present, or soon to meet, in many ways, So yeah.
Absolutely. Well, and as the title of the podcast is, it's those people that really do shape us. So I'm hoping we're going to learn a lot about you through those people that you're going to honor. Okay, so I want to know. It's becoming a bit of a feature of the podcast because I'm fascinated by how people have found the process of doing this, the preparation for this. Because for some people it comes super natural. They're just like, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, no problem. And some people it's really tough. And I had one guy who said, I started with like 100 and it took me a while to whittle it down. So right. I'm curious to see, how did you experience coming up with your 5?
I think I'm definitely opposite to that guy you just mentioned. I was kind of hard because I was trying to define what shaped your life is. It isn't just about people who have meant something to you, or people who you love deeply, or people who you miss deeply, but the shape your life, that's a really loaded concept. Because you're talking about, it's not just that you've had a personal relationship with them, but you're talking about, do I refer to them? Do I reference them? And ultimately, do I want them to be proud of me? Because whether we like it or not, the people that mean the most to us, we can never escape the desire to make them proud of us or happy of us. I don't think you can separate that from it. And it's not about external validation. In fact, these people, when they come into your lives, they are the opposite of external validation, because there was never pressure from them, you feel, for you to validate yourself, because they've accepted you already. So it's about how they live their lives and what they do that have really shaped your life. So I found it really hard, because whereas there've been many, many people I've admired, many people that I've loved, that actual thing of, oh, someone I really want to make proud of me, someone I guess I'm proud of, and that's why I want to make proud of me, was harder, you know?
Good. Well, I like the way you framed the sort of duality of that,
Mm-hmm.
because you're right. On one level, it's like honoring those people that have invested in you in some way. Because if they have, if they've arrived on this list, I imagine they've had some kind of impact, whatever that is. That will be revealed shortly.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea of you're demonstrating your gratitude towards them, but also you want them to be proud of you
Right, yeah.
in that process. That's quite interesting.
Yes,
So
there's something, I don't want to use the word parental, but there's something about whether they know it or not, they've nurtured you in a certain way, I feel. So maybe proud is the wrong word, because that implies a sort of pressure.
yeah,
But
I
you'd
get it.
like them to be observing everything you do that you're proud of. Does that make sense? I guess is the best way of saying it, you know?
Yes, it's a
Yeah.
form of honouring, isn't it? And it's a
Yes.
form of gratitude.
Yes.
So all right, okay. Well, let's get into it then. Let's talk about the first one on your list.
The first one, and this is going to be a bit cheeky because I've definitely cheated. My parents, and I grouped them as one very deliberately, not to diminish either one, but because I realized growing up they were such a unit, and I couldn't separate where the best advice in my life came from, which one. And I can't separate where the human being I would like to be more like came from, because they were a unit. And I realized even in my marriage, and it took me a while to get married, not because I was overly enjoying the bachelor's life, but because I had a true sense of what I believed a partnership could be through them. And unless I had the instinct that this might be, in its own version, not the same marriage, in its own version, that kind of rock solid partnership, then it didn't make sense to me to enter it. Does that make sense? And so
Absolutely.
they formed what for me is family. They formed what for me was marriage. They formed what was morals. Now, my parents were very religious, are very religious, you know. My mom sadly passed away in 2009 from cancer, and I miss her every day to this day. But I'm more spiritual than religious. I do believe in a God in us, a God, whatever, but I've never been able to attach to any denomination or any fully. But they did. And I valued that because I saw what it meant to them, what it means to my dad still, and how it shaped them as people. So that moral code, that generosity, my dad always said, I think it was his grandfather said, you'll be the tree. There's a certain tree in my culture, I forget the name and I don't want to get it wrong, but there's a tree the branches are so wide that all the birds come and perch on it. That's what they wanted to be, to help. And so I had the parenting, and some of the parenting, as you grow up, you're like, I'm not sure about that. I certainly wouldn't do certain things the way they did, but there's a lot that I would. And I know they were doing what they felt was best for us. And you've met my brother, I don't know if you've met my sisters and all, but you will find that this family unit is quite exceptional, to the point that people are, we're on WhatsApp every day, we're whatever, just, it's quite, and it's one of the things I'm deeply grateful for. So for me, my parents formed this entity that I hope I can get half of what they achieved, not in a material sense, but achieved spiritually, holistically, with their generosity to others, the effect they had on others by being that unit. And that's certainly in this phase, as I have a young baby boy, is something that I feel shaped me and was preparing me to sort of be a father in my own right because of what I learned from them. So I cheated as two of them, but yeah, I hope you understand how
Yeah.
much they're a unit for me, you know.
No, I like that. I think it's like a modeling, isn't it?
Hmm.
There's the model. That's what I want,
Yes.
and a blueprint of how to live. And you know, you when you speak to enough people in this world, some people use um their parenting as a kind of kickboard against,
Mm,
and say, right, that whatever that was, I'm doing the opposite, and things can flip flat back and forth. You know, you get
right.
the, I don't know, the overindulged helicopter parent makes the child that's very aloof and standoffish with theirs, and it goes back and forth generationally. But
Mm.
when it's modelled on something that you really aspire to actually replicate, then that's a generational handover,
Yeah.
isn't
And
handdown.
I'm not sure I would say replicate because, like I said to you, there are forms of parenting that came from a
Yeah,
very
different
African,
age.
whatever age, different
Yeah,
period, that would be
yeah,
very different. But I think the core of where it was coming
yes,
from, that dedication, and the sort of contradictions that, for instance, I'll give an example. You spoke about what I do for a living. I still have the letter to this day, this old airmail. Like, you remember the old blue airmail? But I remember when I was at Yale studying economics to do, and I remember when I decided I was going to become an actor. Now, for the African parents of that generation, and you speak to any artist, that is not something you do. Do you know what I mean? There are only three professions: a lawyer, doctor, and engineer. Those are the
yep.
three. And I was heading, I'm at the top of the probably the top school on the planet doing economics. There's a path set for me, and I say actually wanna. And I finally told them I was going to go to drama school. And to this day, I have packed away that letter they sent me that said, because I thought it was going. This is why I break with my parents. And they just said, yes, this comes as a surprise, but we're just so happy you finally found something that you want to do. All we could do was give you all the opportunity in the world. And if you've had that and made this the decision you want, we're going to back you 100%. And that's what parents do. And I hope I can surprise my son or, in the same way of being able to still have that to both, my parents in many ways were very rigid, but that flip, that understand, I know it was a combination of initial shock, surprise. I know it was my mom saying, okay, let's think about this. I know it was them thinking about it. Then my dad wrote the letter for both of them. And that's an example of what I mean is that old school, old world mentality can be there, that I'll probably be shifting away from that. But at the core was the understanding what their role was ultimately
Yeah,
and making sure that I had that.
yeah, that they were enabling you to be what
The
you
best
needed. Yeah, the
version of
best,
yes.
and also the live your life independently of them,
And be
but
happy.
roots, but connected with them, but
Yes.
just be happy.
Ultimately they
Yeah.
really just for all the things I agreed with or didn't, their goal was always the same to genuinely thinking for you to be happy. And yeah,
Well, they
so yeah.
deserve the top spot,
Yes.
both of them. No, I like that. I like that a lot. Oh, super. Okay, well let's get into number two. Who comes next?
Number two and was, believe it or not, Paul Newman. And I
Okay.
got to meet, I didn't, again, this wasn't someone that was in my life, unlike my parents constantly, but he felt like he was in my life. And I was just fascinated by this guy that was the biggest star in the world at one point, but he turned his life into so much philanthropy and just giving back. And at the same time, if you read any of his diaries and stuff, which I devoured, or his autobiographies, or I don't know if it was a biography, I've read several things, you found a sort of unease with fame and an awareness of how much luck he had in it.
Mm.
And then in 2001, randomly, I just was in the middle of my first season with the RSC. We had a little bit of a break. And I flew to New York to see a friend. And she said, let's go see this show. I think that the theater is now defunct. It was called like the Blue Light Theater or the Blue Light Group, something weird, like off Broadway. And in the intermission of this show, there's Paul Newman reading the program. And of course, New Yorkers being New Yorkers, half of them didn't notice, and the other half that noticed were like, oh, no, we're in New York. We don't trouble people. But I'm there going, that's my hero. I had just watched Nobody's Fool. I'd seen Cool Hand Luke, God knows how many times that, I am going to go say hi to him. I went up to him just to say hi. He heard my accent. He said, where are you from? He said, what do you do? And I said, well, I'm an actor. I'm actually in the middle of a season with the Royal Shakespeare Company. His eyes lit up. Joanne Woodward came over. And for 15, 20 minutes, he talked to me about acting, life, and art entirely. No sense of like he made me an equal with him for those, and no one could believe, including my friend that were there, because it wasn't just, hey, can I get your picture, your autograph? We just really engaged, and those eyes, those baby blues, locked into mine, and we talked about, and there was a respect there. And so it was finding someone whose generosity of spirit I know I want to try to have, whose philanthropy I know I want to try to have in my own level, whatever the means might be. Artistically understanding any idea that, oh, you're the best in the room, you're mad. That's not how it works. That humility, I guess, ultimately.
Yeah.
And I got a sense of a guy who real life and family and real life and who you are as a person in this industry. And I pick him because he was in this industry and was at the top of it. He always held on to that. And meeting him and finding that he was like that in real person, he was just an example for me. I would love to be a Paul Newman. Does that make sense? In how I am generous to others, how I'm generous to strangers, to people I'll never know in the world, but generous to them somehow. And also an awareness of the humility of because it's so hard, sometimes you're rolling high, you're in massive premiere, the world's telling you're great. Sometimes you're being rejected by some first time director that you're like, what? That ego thing can keep doing this. It can be smashed, it can be up and down, and whatever. You see your therapist, you talk to, but to have someone who had his demons, there's no doubt about it. You read that insecurity was there, but just channeled it into being a good human being as much as he could. Really, really,
Well, it's like
made a big impact on me.
Yeah, but it's like again, it's like a continuation of a theme from your parents, isn't it?
Yes.
And a similar relationship modeling there too.
Yes.
His dedication to Joanne was that's legendary as well.
Legendary, the two of them. And it was a bit rocky how they met, and there was all ups and downs, but once they met, it was a dedication. And I hope I have that dedication throughout in this. And in many ways, it's more specific than even my parents because of the industry I'm in.
Yes.
And with my wife being, an actor and all that, it's like, I hope you're my joke too. I said, I hope you're my Joanne. I think you're my Joanne. You know what I mean? Yeah.
But just to have those role models, like that they exist, because I can't even imagine a day in the life of you. Not a world I'm from, but I imagine that it is challenging on relationships. It must be, because of the ups and downs, like you just mentioned. So to have a role model there in terms of how to be, on all aspects of him, but the great iconic star that he was, but the humility just talking to you on that level, plus his values.
Yeah, absolutely.
And to know that you can have all three of those things and still be wildly successful at your craft.
Yes.
That must be very grounding for someone who's aspiring for that.
Absolutely. And that's the right word. He completely grounded me. I mean, I remember just going, I'm so excited I've started this journey because I've met him and I have a target. I have something I want to aim for. You know what I mean? I remember him. So yes, he shaped me in that. I was like, oh, I literally was just watching not Cool Hand Luke, Nobody's Fool. And I talked to him about that. And here he is. And just one of those moments where the universe, the God, whatever you want to call it,
brought you together.
was just saying, hey, I've been listening to you.
Yeah.
Here's Paul Newman. Why don't you go have a chat with him? Do you know what I mean? Get inspired.
Yeah.
You know,
That's
it's
just
amazing.
what you needed. Oh,
Yes.
wonderful. Okay, well, that's a fabulous number 2. Okay, well, I can't wait to hear number 3 is then. So where's this going to go?
Number 3 is my teacher, Miss Brewis, my English teacher at Caterham School. She taught me English A level. She actually taught English GCSE and A level. And Miss Brewis' passion for literature was so fundamental for the actor I am now. I think she's the one that made me, without question, there's no think. Miss Brewis made me fall in love with Shakespeare. I remember we were studying Antony and Cleopatra for A level, and I just remember her just having us push the desks back and stand up and read out loud this play. And then sometimes she would read it and just pause in the middle of it. And that, it wasn't for everyone. Not everyone felt that, but I know that connection happened. And I feel that when I came around to acting and Shakespeare was sort of thrust upon me, as they say, I was so confident with it because I knew what to look for. I knew the humanity of Shakespeare. I knew the excitement of language without having studied iambic pentameter properly. I think we talked about iambic pentameter. How could you study Shakespeare and not do it? But I knew the idea. I think she helped me with the idea of imagery because I remember the papers I wrote. I remember just getting like 96% or 100% in some mock exams and stuff like that, and acing because I got it. I wasn't afraid to be theatrical in my writing. I remember that. And so I wasn't afraid to use drama while writing a serious paper because there was no way you could approach this material and not do it that way, you know?
Yeah.
So I felt she really, and I beyond Shakespeare, but I would say Shakespeare because if you looked at my resume, you see my work, to this day, Shakespeare still remains the dominant factor in all my work put together, you know? And so I can say that was the beginning of me being an actor, not just someone who loved watching actors or seeing what they did, but actually starting the journey before I knew I was starting the journey was with Miss Brewis. And I remember after doing my A-level exams, just a long chat with her, and I told her what the questions was and how I answered it, and she was like, brilliant. And I knew I'd aced it because she got it. And I just remember thinking that whenever in the past I've done shows and we've toured, and part of it has been about going into schools, and I've had her on my shoulder. Let's make this relevant to you. Let's get it exciting. Not just the fact that your curriculum only needs you to read Act 1 for your curriculum. Let's talk about the whole piece. Let's perform it. And then years later, and I attribute this to Miss Brewis. I remember I was doing a tour of Romeo and Juliet. I was playing Romeo, and our stop was Notre Dame, the university, and I went in to do one of those classes, and I wanted to do a scene from Romeo and Juliet, and I said, okay, who wants to read this out loud? And some people put up their hands, something, but there was this really quiet girl, really, you could tell, meek. There was no question. And she sort of put her, I said, okay, you. Then there was this guy, this was about 2003. So that was an early stage to have laptops to take notes, but he was one of those. You know, and he put his, and I said, you. And the class, I remember the reaction from the class just going, oh, God, these two.
Why
these two? And we got to work here and we explained it in the way I feel Miss Brewis explained scenes to me. And I explained it to them. I said, this is what's at stake here. You've risked your life, Romeo, to be here. This is what's at. And these two did this scene so beautifully. And the girl just and the class applauded and whooped and went nuts. It was something out of a Disney high school movie.
Yeah.
They went nuts for these two. And I saw how much it meant to them. And I was leaving the class and the teacher chased me down the hall, half in tears. And she says, I've been trying to get her to open up for a semester and a half.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. And I take that back to Miss Brewis because I think she awakened something in me and whoever was ready to listen. And whenever I teach, which I don't like doing often because I have a weird relationship with the idea of teaching acting, but I always try and do for them what I feel she did for me. So she structured
Mm.
that my life in that way.
And so it goes. That's the whole pay forward thing, isn't it? It's like
Absolutely.
she influenced you in that way and gave you that confidence, but also the delight in it. Because
Yes.
it can be dry. I mean, but my school days, I'm not going to say I grasped it particularly. I think
Yeah.
I wrestled with it mostly, to be fair.
Yeah.
But it did come to life when I did go to the theatre and see
Yeah.
it performed, and I think that's where Shakespeare comes alive, doesn't it? And the fact you could bring it to life for that group and have them also, embody it and enact it
Yeah.
is visceral then, isn't it? It's not, it's putting all that human emotion in. And
Absolutely. And also
yeah.
it's saying that it belongs to you. I love working
Mm,
in inner city communities, and it's certainly when one of the stops I did on that tour was to Santa Monica, to a very inner city school, and mainly brown and black students, and saying actually you don't have to play the maid in Romeo and Juliet, you can be Juliet. I'm watching the language come out of their mouths and going, I can do this. That made it, that was profound to me. That is always profound to me because now it's opening up a lot more slowly but surely. But even as far as when I moved to the States in 2012, I moved to the state back to the States from London because I wasn't getting a shot at TV and film as a black actor in London.
mm-hmm.
Still, there were only like 3 or 4 actors that the decent roles would go to of color. You
Yeah.
know, so now it's different. So for me, it's shaped my life, and every time it happens a lot, not just black people or brown people or whatever, but every time someone comes and say thank you for what you're doing for us on the street because they've seen the split, me play a character like that on the
Yeah.
split, or they've
Yeah.
seen Guardians and me play that character on
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
as opposed to the usual characters of color. That means a lot to me because that is my remit. That is what, in many ways, Shakespeare did to me. It's like, oh, no, I don't
Mm.
want to do Othello. I actually want to do Hamlet. Is that You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like it's important for me. So my mission statement has been shaped very much by people like Miss Brewis, who recognized that I could do Shakespeare and encouraged it without any sense of, maybe you should just play Aaron in Titus Andronicus, mate. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? It
Yeah.
isn't that. Yeah.
And then the only last point I wanted to make about this, because I'm absolutely, I'm on the receiving end of people's art in this format.
Yeah.
I've been a musician in my life, and so I understand what it is to perform. But
hmm
when I think of you, and I think of other actors who've come through the sort of the Shakespeare sort of stable, as it were,
hmm
it always, and it could just be coincidental, but they all seem to have very long careers
mm
because it's such a almost like creating a footing, if you like, and a substance to you that
hmm
can take your acting in so many different directions. So that's maybe another gift that Shakespeare's given you, is
Yeah,
this
it's a
idea that you can just go in multiple directions from there because you have that grounding.
Yeah, I mean, just the nature of being in any Shakespearean repertoire is like, you're doing 3 shows a season or national, 2 shows back to you're playing how many characters in your head. Yes, there's a real grounding and there's a real base that it gives you and more, but at the very least, the base of like you wrap your head around this language and you make it seem culturally relevant. And if you can do that with that, you can do that with most writing that is of this time. But also it's about finding the beauty in language. And a lot of writers are relieved working with actors that come from that background because I'm not going to a set, whether it's a TV film, whatever, or a new play, and saying, oh, I'm going to change this because it
Mm,
suits me. I was like, no, I respect that you've written this and I'm going to breathe as much life and spontaneity to it, and hopefully you like it. And if there's any changes to be made, you'll see it just as quickly as I do. Does that
yeah,
make sense? That's the
yeah,
difference. I think that ground, it also gives you a versatility. You don't
that's
have
right.
time in Shakespeare to dwell on,
Yeah.
or I need to find that emotion before I speak. You speak on the
Mm,
language, you speak on the text, and your whole instrument has to be in tune, ready to go. there is no time for this to catch up with this or this to catch up with that. You know what I mean? It all has to be in tune and you do it. And sometimes you speak it before you feel it and it comes later. Emma Thompson does a fantastic, there's an interview you can find with her on YouTube talking about the very thing, you know. She's one of my favorite people too in the world. So,
yes, me too. I'm a proper fangirl on Emma.
Yeah. You should get on this talk show. She'd be great. I did the movie. Oh wow, there was some really honorable mentions to this list because I did this. Sir Richard Eyre, did this TV version of King Lear, and I played King of France. Florence Pugh was Cordelia. Anthony Hopkins was Lear. Emma Thompson was Goneril. I mean, what a cast. Jim Broadbent, it was amazing. But I just fell in love with her and Tony. Like, they were just like beautiful people. And again, it comes to sort of the Paul Newman thing. It's like the really good ones, the really top-notch ones are often quite human and good people. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, there's the realness about them. And that comes across.
Yeah,
you get that
absolutely.
from them. So that's why we're all in love with them a little bit. So that's brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I'm so glad that was your experience with learning Shakespeare. As I say, who knows? Maybe if I'd paid more attention, I could have gone the same direction. I doubt it. Okay, so who is number 3? Let's get on to number 3.
No, that was number 3.
Oh, that was 3. I'll have to edit this now then. Okay, so who is number 4?
This was kind of a really tough one because I know who I want to finish the show with, but because there's so many people that fall into that, I can't not. I've sort of gone through stages, formative, my parents, you know, dream, whatever, Paul Newman, then actually practical as in a teacher. But I think specifically to my acting, which is what brought me to your attention, specifically to my acting, as in the craft of acting. The late, great Sir Michael Boyd, who was the artistic director of the Royal Shakespeare Company and passed away, I believe last year, was it the year before? God, after COVID, the years. But I went to his, I did a little thing for his memorial service earlier this year. He shaped, in 2006, Michael undertook with the RSC a refurbishing of the RSC, rebuilding of the main building, and opening what used to be the shed and making that the main space. And together with doing that, he decided to do the entire history cycle. In fact, they did the entire canon, more or less, but he specifically was doing the 8 plays of the is that tetralogy of the history cycle. And this was a project that he could have had anyone. He could have had any of the very famous alumni of the RSC. In fact, I remember articles coming out before any rehearsal had been done saying, why on earth would you do this without X, Y, and Z playing X, Y, and Z? Who are these people that are playing Henry the Sixth? I was playing Henry the Sixth. Who are these unknowns and whatever? And of course, when they came out, they became a cultural phenomenon. I mean, everyone came. They were coming over and over. I remember we were in the Roundhouse in Camden and seeing teenagers lining up to get in, you know, for Shakespeare. How did he shape my life? I think that decision to say, oh, thank you for that, but I'm building an ensemble, and I will go find my ensemble and give people parts according to what they deserve, as opposed to taking what often directors do, and casting directors, is the shortcut and get bums by getting the known face. I believe in what I do as a director, and I believe these are the actors to do it. And I'm going to go back and build an ensemble, which is the backbone of what great acting companies are about. New ensembles, not constantly using the same people all the time. And for all of us, Michael, and you could tell in his memorial service and the love that was there, he was our champion. He was another father figure, I guess. But I think he was a champion to art in England in general, and that's why he got knighted. He was a fearless maker of art. He was never conventional. He taught you how to follow your heart. I know that sounds obvious in the craft, but not many directors are like that. Not many working directors are like that. He was brave in his decision making. He was ready to make mistakes. He was always 50 steps ahead of you, but allowed you into the conversation to see if you could change his mind or influence his mind, shall we say. He was a great father, husband. He's another sort of, for me, practically, like he is a sort of weird sort of director, artistic Paul Newman, but one that actually shaped my life. And he brought me out of obscurity. That show, Henry VI, made my name in England. Got me on a stamp, in England officially. And I owe him so much for that faith in me, because I remember I went into the audition and I was supposed to audition for Hotspur. And in the middle of the Hotspur audition, he sort of rubbed his chin and said, do me a favor and read this. And I opened it and it was Henry VI for the Molehill speech. Now, I need to preface this by the fact that my eldest brother, Danny, passed away in 2000. And one of the last conversations I had with him before he went into hospital was how David Oyelowo had just done the year before, or that year, an early iteration of the histories, only the Henry VI plays. That's all they did. Michael directing, and was the first Black king to do it. And him saying to me, my brother saying, maybe it's time for you to come back because they're finally opening doors for whatever. Fast forward 6 years later, literally almost to the day, Michael gave me that thing, even though I'd gone into audition for Hotspur, but gave me Henry VI. So I knew I was going to get it. The fact that he was tapped into whatever was going on means that he had to come into my life, and subsequently became good friends. Whenever I was in London, since I moved here, I would have dinner with him and his lovely wife, Caroline, and kids. And, cancer took him, but he was pretty much working to the end. And I feel there is no single person I can say I owe my career more to than him, because not only was the show a success and got us on the map, but we believed in ourselves. If someone had been telling him, go get, I don't know, Ray Fiennes for this role, and he chose instead to get me, that's telling you something about what he feels about you. Does that make sense? And you can take that with you and grow from it, So I thank him for that, and I miss him every day.
Well, I just want to pick up on a few points there, if I may. So, firstly, I wasn't aware about your brother, so I'm so sorry that
he was the eldest. He would have been Odiri's elder. Yeah, eldest.
Right,
Danny. Yeah.
Okay, so just wanted to say that, but also, with Michael, obviously he had this immense impact on you and your career, and again shaping you. Were you ever able to kind of express that to him? Did he always know that he occupied such an important part of your life?
I wish I had. No. I think he came over to New York after that, and when my first year back in New York, so the second year, so this was 2014, and he came over to Theatre for a New Audience, and he was doing a production of Tamburlaine, and he wanted me to play Bajazeth, which is one of the supporting characters. And he probably suspected because I'd done Tamburlaine before, years before, not Bajazeth, but I'd done the play before. And he probably suspected that if I was going to be in a production of Tamburlaine, I'd want to play Tamburlaine. But John Douglas Thompson, who's a wonderful actor, was contracted to do it and was going to do it. So Michael knew he had to do a charm offensive on me to do Bajazeth. And he did. We went out for dinner, we did it. And I did remember telling him, I'll do it for you. Okay. I didn't really want to do it, I'll do it for you. And then one of my big regrets is that years later at the RSC, he was going to do Tamburlaine again, and he wanted me to do Tamburlaine, and I just couldn't. That's one of my big regrets, because I feel that would have been, in work terms, a chance to say, this is how much I adore you and appreciate, but I just couldn't make it work with my schedule. I think he knew how much I valued him. I don't think we'd have had the dinners and the whatever with his family and brought me into his home if he didn't know. We made a special effort. In fact, literally just a couple of months before he died, I was doing a one night only at St. Martin's in the Field uh, concert act, concert thing, and he came, and he must have been really ill, but he came and didn't talk about it and was like, this stupid cancer thing is popped up, but I'm fine, it's good, it's all clear, it's going to be fine. And he came, and he came to that. So our relationship and commitment to each other was always there. But I wish, how do you say that to someone living? Maybe if I'd known how much time we had left, I'd say that to him. Maybe if I could have visited him at the hotel, I'd say that. But you don't really say that to people that you're in and out with, talking to all the time, and trying to plan projects together. You don't really say, oh, by the way, you shaped my,
Yeah.
I hope innately he knew.
I think he did.
Yeah.
Most definitely. And the showing up thing, and the choosing, and there's so many sort of key words that you've said there: to be chosen, to be seen, to be exalted above all others because you were the one he wanted. That's such a wonderful feeling.
Yes.
And he sounds like, I imagine he kind of, you the things you do now are to impress him still. And
I think I'm aware of him. I think of him and I'm aware of him, and I try to bring him up. I try to honor him by bringing him up whenever I can.
Yes.
I just did my first play in 6 years at Pasadena Playhouse, playing Cyrano de Bergerac. I remember talking to Michael about wanting to play Cyrano, and with the director, and I said, too melodramatic. So I hope he was watching that production.
Yeah. But one of the themes in this podcast is this idea of living well and by being spoken of well. And it is an aspiration for me. I think not that I'll be here to witness it, but I would love to be spoken of well by the people I've influenced, and I hope I have.
Yeah.
And I hope I continue to. But it's when I hear you talk about Michael, it's like, that's a life well lived. I mean,
absolutely. It was a life, and it's a shame that you almost can't be aware of that till
it's too
you're
late.
gone, till too late. But you're right. The only way is to go into the undiscovered country, knowing what you've tried to do and having faith that it will be seen in the right light when you're gone. The only way you can do anything about it is to try and live the best you can now, because and these guys really, you can't take it with you, so what are you leaving behind?
Well, and that's the whole idea of legacy. I mean, he's got a legacy of a body of work.
Yes.
But he impacted you more as a human being, as a human being more than his body of work.
Yes,
you could have a great career and body of work, but if you don't actually make people feel something that they want to then talk about and bring your name up, as you say, every opportunity, then that's a whole different league. So
we loved him. That whole company loved him. Those that worked with him again, those that hadn't worked with him again, just loved him so much and missed him.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm very glad he's on the list. Okay. The finale. Who's number 5?
And so you've met my family, so you know how incredible Odiri is, and you know how incredible, I don't know, you haven't met my sister Nene, first British Black ambassador, just amazing. I love them to death. But my baby sister, Oluchi, doctor, she's an oncologist, is someone who doesn't even know, and if she ever sees this, she won't believe it has shaped my life so much. Because, of course, we were the closest together, and we fought all the time, and we whatever, but she's grown up to be, I'll just put it into perspective, she's now a doctor in Lagos, Nigeria, oncologist. I believe the only medical, because there aren't any, she went back because too many people were dying from very curable cancer. I had no idea this was going on. She had a cushy job in Leicester at the University of Leicester, the hospital, and everything was doing great, whatever. I didn't know for years she was planning and whatever to go back to Lagos to find work to make things better. As far as oncology goes, she was also the person when my mom was dying, probably knew best what was happening and was still there and dealt with it. She was the one that my mom dictated pretty much her will. That when she accepted she was gonna die. I mean, I couldn't have done it. I couldn't have sat in that room and had her list do. She did that. Also knowing medically. And from the time she could speak, she always said she was going to be a doctor, as far as I can remember, a doctor. And she did it. She chased that. She did it. She chose oncology despite how hard that can be. She's back in Lagos now doing exactly what she's now become a sort of figurehead for improving oncology practice, making it more accessible, radiology, all that stuff that we've been lagging behind. She's now the figurehead driving it with the government, with him. It's quite incredible what she's achieved in just a handful of years. But the main thing is she gave that all up, what she had here, and to go back to Lagos to do it because she knew that was what she had to do.
Well,
and that level of bravery and that level of, because we haven't lived in Nigeria since she was 8, I was 10. She says, I'm going back. And she did it. And she's made a success, tenacity and dedication, and wants to plan, building clinics in different parts of the, and the government and whatever people are backing her because she is the one that finally did it. I'm so proud of her. And I think all my family, I'm proud of every single one of my family members. You've met my brother, what he's achieved with this company, and we're all very proud of each other. But and she's very, her faith, she's deep, her faith is strong. But she's the kind of Christian I like. She preaches what do you know what I mean? She does what she preaches.
She lives it.
She gives it, she lives it. And just so proud of her. So, and she's shaped me because I go, oh God, you can actually, there is no limit to how much you can dedicate yourself to others and still have your own life, but still have that as a mission statement. So again, it inspires me to do better, to be, and she's my baby sister. I don't have to look beyond the family for that.
Well, I mean, your pride in her is evident, but it's almost admiration. I think there's a different level there.
Yeah.
You admire her.
I do.
And that's really powerful. And I imagine she'll be blushing if she heard this, because
Probably.
People like that don't ever really stop to think about it, do they? They're just doing it, which is why we admire them all the more.
Absolutely.
So,
yes.
And yes, to take the harder route, most people don't.
No.
Most people don't.
It's not their heart isn't in the right place or whatever, but it's hard to just say, that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
That's again, it's like the doctor thing. She knew from a toddler.
That's what she was going to do.
And that's what she stuck to her guns to. So I guess she is just one of the most honorable people I know also,
Oh, she sounds amazing.
Yeah.
I need to meet her too.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's some really strong people. I mean, that's a thread. There's some very strong personalities who've got very strong convictions and values, and that's very, very clear. And what I want to hear from you is, like, I can definitely plot some specifics like that, but I want to know how you evaluate who you are today and attribute the person you are today to those people specifically.
Who am I today? If I knew that, I wouldn't be paying my therapist.
Yeah, this is not meant to be a therapy session. No,
yeah. No, I think. Well, I've followed. I ultimately, I mean, I would have chased it anyway, but it would have been a hell of a lot more difficult. But the fact I'm an actor now, a big part of why that happened was the support I got from my parents, right down to making sure I could eat. Do you know what I mean? Stuff like that. So that support, but also the sort of support of the fact that suddenly my dad started watching movies. Suddenly he became a fan of James Cagney and Humphrey Bogart. He went to the bit, and that sort of love and that sort of joy. I would put my whole family in this. How they watch everything I do, how they're proud of it, has driven me to go. It's not that I want to impress you, but I'm going to keep giving you joy as long as I can. Does that make sense? So when I think of myself, let's get the factors of what I think of myself. I really want to make sure I'm a great dad and a husband. I have my parents to thank for that. I know my son, or however kids we end up having, but right now my son is going to be surrounded by love. So I thank my family and my close friends for that. I know I want to keep doing great work that resonates in people like Paul Newman, or that would make Michael Boyd, really proud. So I thank them both for that. So I'm driven in making decisions that I go, there are thousands and thousands of actors, there are thousands and thousands of projects, but how many of them really count? I'd like to count somehow. Do you know what I mean? And I owe that to them because I feel they counted with what they did. And I'm going to try as much to do that as that. Miss Brewis, this journey started with you. Thank you for that. And the joy of being artistic and knowing in itself is a joy. I owe that to her. And then to my sister, to go at something with defiance, at obstacles if need be, because it wasn't easy to make that transition. But when you've said you're going to do it, to commit to it, I get the sense of commitment. So I feel that I am committed. I set very high standards. I try to be generous. I try to help. And I'm really, the main thing for me now is that how do I put all these aspects of my life to be a great father and husband? And I get that from, as you know, my family. So I think who I am now is someone that's trying to balance all those pieces together and trying to do it with, now what I'm trying to infuse it is with joy as opposed to disappointment or happiness, but just joy in general.
Yeah,
which
my favorite word.
Yes, which I get from all those people. So yeah, that's.
And you've answered my next question, kind of all wrapped up in that, because my next question is always, and how are you paying that forward? But you've just summarized some of the key things that you're doing.
Yeah.
And earlier you touched on a few things as well, the work you're doing to inspire others to have a passion for Shakespeare, for example.
Yeah.
So, there you are clearly on that path. You're clearly made this way. That, from all that inspiration, from those people who've shaped you, it is your nature, I think, to take that forward and pay it forward and find as many opportunities as possible to kind of honor them in your actions, as well as just thanking them and kind of recognize them in the person that you are. Would you agree with that?
I think so. I'd like to agree with that.
I agree with that.
I find like I'm not in the paying it forward. I don't know if I put that as the first thing I want to do, if I'm being honest with you. But I am aware that if I do what I love really well, and then I'm open to share it with people, I would be actually paying it forward. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
There's things I can do that's extra, saying yes to a workshop and all that stuff. But actually, I feel that I am paying forward for me is like really, it's almost retroactive or retrospective that I realize how much I've paid it for when someone comes and says, that thing you did whenever, it meant so much to me. And I go, thank goodness for that. That's how I feel I'm going to be paying forward, by trying to do what I do. And then it's affecting people. And maybe down the road, I find out how it affected them and how it made a difference to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess it's that sort of implicit, explicit thing. So explicitly, you are doing actions, you are taking things and putting it into the world. But just how you are and who you are and how you move through the earth is going to have an impact. People are going to meet you and feel something. And you're right, maybe I'll meet them in years to come. I'm still doing this podcast and they'll say, oh yeah, I met that Chukwudi. He was great. He really showed me that way. And so it goes. Wouldn't that be great? I mean, why not? Why not?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So my final question, and I gave you a little bit of warning because you and I spoke before, which was who should I be speaking to next and why?
I think you should definitely be speaking to my father next because he's 96 and is he 97 now? An amazing man. And I know he's been gagging to do an interview of some kind. He watches them on TV all the time. So the idea is he'll probably be all dressed up to the nines, ready to go with you. But I think he's an incredible person who's shaped so many lives. I mean, hundreds and hundreds of lives have been improved and dreams made happen initially with my dad and my mom. But since she passed with my dad, because of my mom and how she inspired him, I think he's had an incredible life. I believe you've read his book, which you wrote as a...
It's really good.
As
I
a
don't mean that
memoir.
patronizingly, because when you said he was 96, and because we spoke before, and O'Deary obviously talks about him a lot,
Yeah.
and it was O'Deary that got me onto the book actually.
Yeah.
I don't know what I was expecting, but actually it's really good, and
It's really,
it's really considered. It's
it's
well
very
written.
considered and it's well written. And he wrote it as a memoir for us, just to know the
Completely.
things we'll never know. And that's what's beautiful. So I nominate my father. I think, you're going to have to work very hard to keep him on time.
That's all
But
right.
I nominate my dad. Yes.
Oh, wonderful. I
Yeah.
kind of hoped you were. Because he's the sort of, the little I know already, he's a remarkable guy. I mean, the things that stand out already was just how well he's spoken of, even in the foreword.
Yes.
To have a foreword written that about you like that must have been so humbling for him, and so he must have felt so warm
Yeah.
to his best friend to say all those lovely things. And then the little I know, not having his first pair of shoes till he was 14.
14. Yeah.
And that's incredible to go on to achieve what he's achieved, and not just in his professional life, but to raise, you all. And his dedication. Is it Dorothy? Your mum?
Dorothy was my mom.
Dorothy.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
His
Yeah.
dedication to her is very warming. So,
Yeah.
no, I can't wait to meet him. And one of my best friends is 92.
Wow.
And yes, he didn't state a time. I've actually interviewed him fairly recently, and he had no respect for this process at all. He really just nothing at all.
I guess when you've lived almost, 100
Yeah.
years, you have the right to say, I will take my time with this interview and make it work. Yeah.
And the funniest part, when I said, "What are you going to do to pay it forward?" He said, "I've not done enough. I'm 92. I'm just going to have a rest now."
Good for him.
So
Good for
no,
him.
I would love to meet him. That would be an absolute joy for me. So
Amazing.
as this has been, it's been so nice, and I'm so glad you've embraced this as a kind of a way of talking about the people in your life as opposed to your achievements, because a lot of the time, and I've met people in the sort of public eye before, and there's always a pressure, I think, to talk the latest thing up, the latest thing you're in, and for just to pause and say, actually, do you know what? I'm not going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about the people that have really mattered to me and have given me this ability and enabled me to be this person I am. To me, that's what this is about. It's and I think everyone's going to have the same experience as me, which is really getting to know you through this. And it's been a really lovely experience. I've really enjoyed
Thank
listening
you
to you.
so much for inviting me. And what a great structure to do it. And you know what's weird is that I don't see how we could have done this show and me talk about me. Do you know what I mean? It's like, for me, it's when you have a show about people that have shaped you. They've shaped many others, and you're lucky to be one of the ones they've shaped. That stuff. So thank you so much.
No, likewise. Thank you so much. All right. Take care now. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. I really enjoyed that. What a warm, intelligent, articulate man he is, and the way he describes those 5 people and others that he interwove, it just warmed my heart. I think obviously at the core of everything is his sense of family. So yes, I really, really enjoyed that, and I hope you did too. And if you did, please like or subscribe to this podcast, and maybe share it with someone else who you think might enjoy this conversation. Thank you so much for listening. Take care now. Bye-bye.